Views and opinions of the hosts and guests are their own and do not necessarily reflect the views of the management and staff of Guardian Radio.
Good morning this morning, and welcome back to Guardian Radio 96.9 FM, your station for fresh news, smart talk all day. It is Tuesday, the 22nd of April, 2025, and you are on the clock with Erin Green. It is Earth Day. It is Earth Day. Got lots to talk about. If you want to talk about Earth Day, call in and share a word. I got a little housekeeping before we get into the show today. First of all, that song by Avi, right, producer? Listen, let's say good morning and blessings to Avi and Stalit, who at one point completely revived rake and scrape in the country. That dirty Nagua rake. I love it, I love it, I love it. It's always a good time when the Nagua boys on the stage. In fact, Stalit, his song, Raking and Be Scraping, is one of my favorite Bahamian songs and one of my favorite Bahamian videos. Like I said, we got lots to talk about this morning. I don't want to call it an open line, but it's an open line. 323-6232, 325-4316, 325-4259, 242-300-5720. Toll-free Family Island listeners. 422-GR96, that's 422-4796 is the text line. Of course, we're going to talk about the Pope's passing, but remember, we have a competition, and I'm here to tell you what it is and what the rules are. Again, the Loyalist Charles Farquharson Will Competition 2025. The organizer of the competition, Dennis Carlton Bethel, who is the great-great-grandson of Charles Farquharson, has organized the competition. To win, you must provide the government recording record of Loyalist Charles Farquharson's will. Again, the government recording record. The competition is open to junior school and high school students across the archipelago. We will select one winner from San Salvador, one winner from New Providence or Grand Bahama, and one from the other Family Islands. One entry per day. Competition will end on April 30th. Now, to win, you must provide the government recording record of Loyalist Charles Farquharson's will and the date of Loyalist Charles Farquharson's death. Of course, the organizer has the information already. Right? That's how we're going to be able to tell whether you won or not. So the organizer has already done the work but he wants to stimulate, encourage, generate amongst the young people, right, like an appreciation for history and culture and research. And so he's offering a prize to 3 winners, one from San Salvador, one from New Providence or Grand Bahama, and one from the Family Islands. Again, the competition is organized by Dennis Carlton Bethel, great-great-great-great-grandson of Loyalist Charles Farquharson. Here's how you play. You call the show. You tell us you have an entry for the Loyalist Charles Farquharson Will competition. You hold the line for the producer. When you're connected with the producer, you give the producer your name, your contact information, your school, your grade, and the answers. You will be contacted shortly thereafter, informed whether you won or you can try again. This is the Loyalist Charles Farquharson Will competition. Charles Farquharson was a Loyalist of Scottish descent. He received an original Crown grant of 500 acres and settled at Prospect Hill on the east side of Watlings Island, now San Salvador. The Farquharson Plantation, established in the 1820s, had 56 slaves 2 years before emancipation. That should read, had 56 enslaved people 2 years before emancipation. It grew mostly guinea corn, a subsistence crop, as well as pigeon peas, sweet potatoes, pumpkin, and cabbage. Again, the estate was owned by Charles Farquharson. That's the Loyalist Charles Farquharson Will competition, open to junior school and high school students. Now, parents, if your student has a winning submission, but they're in school at this hour, please call in on their behalf. We will confirm said information. Good morning. Joining me in studio this morning is Mr. C.A. Nuri. Good morning, Mr. Nuri.
Good morning, Erin. How are you doing?
I am good. I very good. With sad news, the Pope has passed.
Okay.
Yeah. We have a vibrant Roman Catholic community here in the Bahamas.
Are they Roman Catholics or are they Catholics? Because apparently it's two different things.
For real?
Yep. There's Roman Catholics and there's Catholics.
You know, I'm going to look to our in-house Catholic to find out.
I understand. But there's different variations of Catholics throughout the world, right? And how they approach Catholicism.
I find that, like, you remember Goodfellas?
Goodfellas, yeah.
Joe Pesci? Mm-hmm. When he said, I can't even remember the rest.
Oh, hilarious, yeah?
Yeah. Because as far as Catholics are concerned, they're the only religion. I mean, you're right, they're the only form of Christianity, the true form of Christianity. So to hear that there are fractures even within that Catholic space, it's interesting. Mm-hmm. I see you not that engaged in the passing of the Pope. I prepared all kinds of notes, Mr. Newey.
I'm happy to engage you if you wish. Like, have you watched the movie The Conclave?
No, I see all kind of people that watch the movie.
It's a brilliant movie. I happen to have watched it about 2 months ago, right? And I was watching it because it was interesting. It had intrigue and plot, right? It's very religious oriented with a lot of themes about Catholicism, and I wasn't necessarily interested. But as the story went on, it became plausible. You watch it and say, this could happen. Then you see themes, but when the conclusion came, you say, my God, you start praying at the end of it. So having that movie in the background and then having the transition of this particular Pope, you start praying. You start praying and say, my God.
I almost feel like I need to watch this movie to
It's worth. It has themes that you would appreciate.
But here's my thing. Maybe I have to watch this movie to understand the broader global response to the Pope's passing. But you know what they call that? Programming.
You think that's what it is?
So I don't know if I can watch that program.
Or they predicted or they knew that the popes are old, right? They would eventually die.
This is what I would like to talk about this morning in reference to the Pope's passing. The Pope passed, I think, at the age of 88. He was Pope for 12 years, which means that he would have been appointed Pope or elected Pope at 76. Is 76 too old to become Pope? See, what I learned in my research is that any Roman Catholic man could be appointed Pope. You don't have to be in the College of Cardinals. You don't have to be in the group of cardinals. You don't have to be a priest. You don't have to be high up in the rankings. Any Catholic man
I did not know that.
could be. That's what the interwebs told me.
Yeah, because they know there's a College of Bishops, whatever it is, and the College of Cardinals, and the Cardinals come and have the election. So how do you get present if you're an ordinary priest?
Well,
and
you
you're
don't
not
have to be present. Only your name have to be there.
But the names are amongst the people present.
No. The people present get to vote. The name could come from anywhere.
No, the names are amongst the cardinals who are there.
No. Okay, listen. I'm going to read from the notes, man, Mr. Nuri. Here we go.
You find it?
I find it. Technically, any Roman Catholic male can be elected Pope. But the last Pope not chosen from the College of Cardinals was Urban VI in 1379.
My Lord.
So I don't think you have to be in the College of Cardinals, but if the College of Cardinals ain't on your run, right? It's like politics, eh?
Yeah, they're saying for the last we've been doing this way, we ain't changing the feet.
No, you saying that. They didn't say that.
Yeah.
You said that. They ain't saying that.
Happenstance has proven that for the last 500 years they've been doing a particular way. They ain't making no effort to change it.
You don't know that.
They haven't. Anyone?
And here's my thing. You just watch the conclave.
Yeah.
You just tell me at the end of the movie, you say, my God, I got to pray.
You got to pray.
But this is unreasonable?
Yeah, that's unreasonable.
Okay.
Yeah, because definitely at the end of the movie, the conclave, it still was a cardinal. An obscure cardinal, but still was a cardinal who got it.
It's the cardinals who decide. They don't have to be amongst. It's who the cardinals want. If the cardinals want somebody else, it'll be who the cardinals want. So that part, I agree with you with, right? Like what's obvious is whoever the cardinals want is who the cardinals gonna get. So any Roman Catholic male can be elected Pope. And the last Pope who was chosen from outside the College of Cardinals was Urban VI in 1379.
During the Dark Ages.
Here's my thing. BPL didn't exist back then. I don't like these slurs, okay? Here's my thing. Is 76 too old to be elected Pope? Let's take it to a specific experience, we're going to call it. With the increased exposure to malfeasance and wrongdoing, specifically sexual violence and violence against minors and the vulnerable being exposed in parts of the Catholic Church, is 76 years old too old to be the leader of the Catholic Church? My thing is this. Once you got to the place where you have the Pope apologizing to all of Canada, like currently and historically, they apologize all of Canada for the wrongdoings. Do you need a leader? Does a monolith, a body like this, need a leader that not only strikes reverence but fear into the hearts of those that follow them?
One also must appreciate that to be Pope, you're Pope for life, according to the rules.
Right.
So imagine putting a 40-year-old man as Pope.
But if it's,
and he lives another 40 years. And then you have people say, man, I don't really like this. But we know that. We have him for life. There's no other option. But otherwise, you say, okay, we have for 10 years of this and life, new blood. That's just why they tend to vote in old people.
I thought popes were like Bahamian prime ministers chosen by God, right? Like I thought that, what does it matter if he's 40 years old when he's appointed, because this is God's chosen one. Like there's a divine message received by those in the... See, that's why I could understand the dynamic we talked about. The cardinals make the decision, like they do the voting, right? Anybody could be the subject of the vote, but it's the cardinals that receive the divine word from God on who should be Pope. They are inspired by their connection to God, right?
Yeah.
So what's the problem if we are certain that this appointment is a part of a divine process where God speaks to the college, the cardinals in the college, and tells them what to do.
I hear you, and I'll say this: David was chosen, and he had the affair with that woman and had her husband killed. Solomon was chosen, then he had all those other women who he married. Saul was chosen, and you see sin, whatever it is. God chose the best one for the best time, but that doesn't mean humanity and one being human, the frail human, does not come in. In terms of the interaction of
what you just said,
I'm saying that
is that God then determines when your 10 years over. So that we signal that the death of this person is God saying your time finished.
Yeah.
There is no more need for you.
Yeah.
Or is it a punishment like, boss man, you're going too far?
God is a God of punishment. He's a God of anger, God of vengeance, and God of love. He's punished you too. That's why we have judgment. All can get judged. But that's not here nor there.
Will the Pope be judged, or is the Pope's appointment, right? Like you can't become the Pope unless you are judgment free. Like you've hit every assignment, you filled every task, you've reached every standard, and you alone are qualified to lead because it's not just the entire Catholic Church or body. From when you sit in that perspective, you're in charge of the whole world.
But all Catholics and all Christians know that all have sinned and come short of the glory. We sinners. We assume the Pope is a sinner and that he continues to pray and fast in order to overcome sin all the time. And that's why you have aides and persons who are there to protect him and give him information.
Ain't nobody could aid you in your penance, though. You gotta do that by yourself.
But they have intercessories in the church who helps you along your Christendom, who
the Pope's supposed to pray for me. I can't pray for the Pope.
I'm sure the Pope goes to
the Pope don't need my prayers. I need his prayers, eh?
I don't know the mechanism, but I'm sure the Pope gives confession also. He can't confess to himself. I'm sure there's a system.
Confesses to God.
Yeah, but absolution, they have that in their religion, where you can get absolved through prayer and through whoever's your intercessory.
I'm so glad my in-house Catholic is in the space. Producer, who does the Pope perform confession to? Who does the Pope confess to?
The Cardinal, see?
I don't know if I like this.
It's a circular.
So it's like equal among equals.
First amongst equals?
First amongst equals, that's what it is?
I guess so.
I don't know if I like that.
And there's politics in everything, as there's politics inside the church.
Cannot be politics inside the church.
But they can read it. How can it be? It's something not the politics.
The church didn't create politics, did it?
Once you have election, there is politics in it. There's always politics in church. You get elected.
I don't know if I like that.
Our Lord comes down and anoint you.
I don't know if I like that.
It is what it is. Go ahead.
I mean, it is what it is. It's a good thing I'm not a Catholic.
I'm glad I'm not Catholic. I'm removed.
Why you say that like that? Because I say that it's a good thing because I may have been subject to penance that I can't handle. But
no, it's a trying time for Catholics. They understand what the Pope represents to them. The idea that there's an absentee now, and there is now a political aspect of their religion and their leadership moving forward. I assume the new Pope will reassign cardinals to different places and whatever it is. This Pope did a number of apologies to a number of people. There were, for my word, lack of a better word, a lot of controversies on the number of people who he apologized to. This Pope was very liberal in terms of his interpretation of his appointment. And he suffered a number of critique.
What do you think was the most liberal of his statements, proclamations, or movements, right? Because when the Pope moves, the whole church moves with the Pope, right?
Yeah, he sets policy.
I mean, that's how it go into PLP, right?
Yeah, they set policy. After them, not as much. There's chaos. But they set policy. And the idea, he's very liberal against homosexuals, very liberal regarding for acts of forgiveness. You say Canada. The Catholic Church did a number of acts against indigenous people around the world in terms of trying to convert them. He acknowledges that that some wrongs were done. He came out and said, man, what we did to push Christianity forward was unfortunate. It shouldn't have been done in the pursuit of becoming Christians.
So I like what you said. He was liberal against homosexuality. But that's how you framed it just now. He was liberal against homosexuality. And I actually think that may be the most accurate framing, right, of his position. I'm going to read from an article, from a Wikipedia note. Throughout his public life, Francis was noted for his humility, emphasis on God's mercy, international visibility as Pope, concern for the poor, and commitment to interreligious dialogue. He maintained that the Catholic Church should be more sympathetic towards LGBTQ people and stated that although blessings of same-sex unions are not permitted, the LGBTQ individuals can be blessed as long as blessings are not given in a liturgical context. I mean, so I think that your framing of it was actually, at first it made me jump, right? Like, what is Bay trying to say? But that may be the most accurate framing of it, right? Is liberal against homosexuality. So he didn't endorse it and say, look here, God put this on the table to eat just like everything else, no pun intended. But
I saw the pun. Afterwards, I saw it.
You don't have vision. Turn your eyes to the scripture, sir. Turn your eyes to the scripture.
Go ahead.
But he's not going as far, he's not endorsing these things, but he's saying, look here, we're not going to be violent towards gay people. We understand them as a part of the church. I thought that was, right? I liked how you framed it.
Yeah, mind you, that was okay. What concerned a number of Christian people was his liberal approach to that there are different ways to find God. As a Christian, there's only one way. You either get saved or you're going to hell, right? But he give liberty or openness to say that there are perhaps other ways to find salvation, to find God, to end up into paradise.
I don't like the tone that you take in. Like, how could he be wrong if he's the Pope?
That's why they had the referendum, reparation. What do they call it?
Reformation.
Reformation. People thought the Pope was wrong.
Yeah, but we done reformed that. Now we in a good place. You think we about to have another Reformation?
Oh well, the Bahamas is a Protestant type place. Most of the Caribbean United States, that old religion of Catholicism is old world. We are very liberal or different in terms of how we pursue God, not necessarily Catholic.
I found this article from 2013 at the beginning of the Pope's reign. Pope explains name, urges, quote, church for the poor, close quotes. I thought that perhaps this, at the root of it, was perhaps the beginning of the controversy, because this begins to shift the whole world order. Yeah. The focus of Pope Francis's papacy began to emerge Saturday as he offered some intimate insights into the conclave that elected him pontiff, describing how he was immediately inspired to name himself as Francis of Assisi because he wants to see a church that is, quote, for the poor, close quotes. But I thought perhaps the most important or significant shift within the Catholic Church during this time, during his papacy, 12-year reign, I'm read from this article, the repudiation of the doctrine of discovery. The Vatican repudiated discovery, which was used to justify colonialism, which you referenced earlier. Nearly 500 years after papal degrees were used to rationalize Europe's colonial conquests, the Vatican repudiated those decrees, saying the doctrine of discovery that was used to justify snuffing out indigenous peoples' culture and livelihoods is not part of the Catholic faith. The doctrine was invoked as a legal and religious standing by Europeans who, quote, discovered, close quotes, new lands and violently seized it from people who had been living there for generations. The word is millennia. Forever. It has been cited in different arenas for centuries, including by the U.S. Supreme Court. Right? And so even though the church said they stopped taking these things seriously like 40 or 50 years after the papal bulls were established, that we find the doctrine was laid out. Here we go. The doctrine made its way into the U.S. legal system. Quote, back in the 19th century, it was used as a precedent which gave people a sense of title to land that had not been owned with an official title in deed. Close quotes. McCullum said, so what began as a religious decree in the 1400s then became the basis for a legal concept in the U.S. when the doctrine of discovery was invoked in an 1823 U.S. Supreme Court ruling that indigenous people had only rights of, quote, occupancy, close quote, lands they had long lived on. The land then was open for the taking. As a result, quote, as a result of this being written into the American property law, it was actually considered a precedent, close quotes, McCollum said, including citations of a 2005 case in upstate New York. So even though the church says that the papal bulls were not considered valid just 30 to 40 years after they were first issued, they were in fact abrogated legally and nullified by the Vatican by the late 1530s. But then again, like I say, in 1823, brought into U.S. law and then considered a precedent, right? And that's how it survived. I think that is perhaps the most significant shift, what we call policy, under the Catholic Church. But we yet to see the international community herald it and recognize it and cause to come to force the necessary or requisite shifts in law. So now that the Catholic Church has said, look here, that whole thing, we said, well, look here, we come and we claim these lands in the name of Jesus Christ. That was foolishness. In fact, it was against God. It was against the church and what we were supposed to be doing. And I hope that we see movement in that direction because indigenous people have rights to the lands that they are on, that they come from. And we as Africans, this is a serious question and conversation for us because the amount of time that those of us who were brought over from the continent have been here, we can now claim indigeneity. We can claim a belonging. I think this conversation is really, pertinent, relevant for today and in the Bahamas specifically, right, where we see all manner of foreign direct investor and government policy suggesting to us, the people of these lands, that somehow we don't have a right to it. Like maybe you have a right to occupy it, right? But if somebody with a better idea, somebody with more money comes, then obviously the land is for them and not for you, right? So I just thought it was an interesting intersection.
Hopefully in the time coming, we will be able to bring on persons who understand Catholicism more, could give more detail. And only because the world is very superstitious. In the Western Hemisphere, we know that the Catholicism is historically the oldest Christian religion in this sphere, right? So we have a loose vested interest in terms of prophecy and the coming of Jesus, the second coming or whatever that. So we tend to be engaged, especially black people. Black people are very religious. We embrace religion wholeheartedly.
I mean, that's what you call it?
We embrace it.
It was beaten into us.
But even those persons, black people, who do not follow Christianity, do not follow Islam, but choose their religion in their sphere, they are embracing of religion. It seems to be spiritual. In fact, there's
two separate things.
Yeah,
I was all
that,
with you until you used the word.
I'm just saying how we
there.
worship. How we worship seems to be more empathic in terms of energy.
You mean like we feel the hurt of the oppressor and we sit and we pray with him that we would be better slaves so that they could feel better about themselves?
Not necessarily that. In terms of, there are a number of doctrines written where they said Africans save Christianity, or people in the indigenous people save Christianity because of their way of how they worship, right? They believe in the concept of Christianity and worshiping, whereas the Anglo-Saxons who are now moving away from Christianity inside Europe, one, and two, they do rituals. They don't necessarily believe in it or feel it. They just do the ritual of it. So they're saying that indigenous people, black people, African people, tend to save Christianity. They believe in the
You
concept
want me
of
burn
being
the
saved.
you want me burn the whole Roman Catholic? You want me burn the whole church down? You hear what you just said?
There are more indigenous people who are Catholics than Anglo-Saxons,
Because
or
they had
more
it,
Europeans.
because they had it not just beaten into them, they had it burned into them, from the Inquisition to the transatlantic slave trade and chattel
500
slavery.
years later,
500
they
years
still-
of an African
and they
Holocaust.
still believe in it.
Yeah, but that's because it's been beaten into them. And so the question of whether this is a true believing or if this is an entrenchment of psychological trauma. I mean,
But if
for
they-
Christians to suggest that indigenous people save Christianity through the tithes.
The doctrine itself of Christianity, when you put it pound for pound against any other religion, any other concept of living, you find that it suits us as black people.
Since we talk,
It makes sense.
Since we talk,
You don't believe the Bible makes sense?
since we talk,
That
in-
salvation makes sense?
I think that the Bible makes sense if you understand it. I don't
let me
think.
just talk about those who
I
understand
don't
it.
know. I don't think that the Christian
People don't understand it?
interpretation or approach to the Bible is
Straight across
correct.
the board? Straight across the
Yeah.
board? You believe they all lost, all of them Christian lost in terms of how they
You
interpret the Bible.
I'm 48, right? You know what disturbs me most?
What disturbs you most?
Hearing people older than me say
Talk
they
to
waiting
God?
for the Joshua generation.
Yeah.
Yeah, okay then. But since we talk in heresy, let me ask you a real,
Go ahead.
I guess, sticky question. I'm almost certain I saw it in today's paper, Mr. Nuri. Because he lives Rush.
Yes.
Because he lives Rush.
I can face tomorrow.
Christian people celebrating the resurrection of Christ through Junkanoo, an African practice,
Afro-European practice.
because my boy them in Africa having the same festival, just with less European trinkets,
Yes.
right?
They have the same festival in Europe also.
Can Junkanoo and Christianity exist in the same place? Is this a desecration of the Christian experience? Is this a desecration of the African experience? Can both happen in the same place? Is this a clear indicator that we do not have a sure sense of self, sense of place, sense of identity, sense of space?
But as you know, Christianity was started in Africa, right? I'm not talking about the African religion, Christianity. I'm talking about Christianity. The bishop like Augustine, all was on that African coast, and then move into Europe about 200, 300, 400 years later. So going from Jerusalem and those what do they call that? The Middle East, moved to Africa. Before they started even talking about Christianity in Europe with Rome, there was Christianity in Africa. So when you're talking about the African drums and Christianity, we always had that, right? Then it moved to Europe, and they changed it a little.
Phone call. I'm gonna see if I could find the CNURI who's be here when Uncle's be here. Good morning.
Two different concepts.
Good morning, caller.
Hey, morning, Miss Green. How you doing?
I'm good, thank you. How are you?
Hey, yeah, quick question, right? Why would you want to mesh Junkanoo with Christianity?
I'm trying to figure out now. I'll be honest with you. I'll expose myself in this moment.
That's like meshing raisins with coleslaw.
I like raisins and
Why would
coleslaw
you do it?
because it tastes good.
Okay.
You don't like raisins and coleslaw?
You almost.
You like immigration listening, right?
Yeah, I have family inside immigration. We think we're getting passports.
Immigration, don't worry about the Europeans. Only Europeans is put raisin in coleslaw.
That's just blasphemous.
I like raisins and coleslaw.
Yeah, thank you. I mean, for me, caller, I am concerned that we are not thinking deeply about the things that we do. Junkanoo and Christianity are antithetical. Like they don't go together. Junkanoo can't be Christian.
But you know there's a narrative that junk news started in Europe. Not necessarily exactly like parallel to say that it's the only interpretation of junk news, or that's the absolute interpretation of junk news. For years, there's a debate that junk news is a parallel to carnival, right? It being real or not, whatever it is, and that when the Africans celebrated their freedom on Christmas, notice it on Christmas, was an African blend with European construct of carnival to form Jonknu itself. That is a blend. Two different concepts come together. And even in
See,
let me
hold on,
finish
'cause
this point. Davis's book. Davis's book. Davis first name, get going. Christopher Davis's
Yeah,
book.
John Quad II.
They mentioned the Dutch. They mentioned the Dutch and the John Qua being, because they have Jonknu themes in Dutchland, whatever that place is, where they have. In fact, that's why they invited him also to speak, because they said we have this in our country also.
You could tell me that Jonknu is an African producer. Let's get the caller ready. You could tell me that Jonknu is an African diasporic experience, right? I could understand that, but you can't tell me it's European.
No, I'm
Now-
not saying it's strictly
now-
European. I'm saying it might be a blend.
Producer, let's go to the caller. Good morning, caller.
Yes, good morning, Ms. Green. Good morning, Mr. News.
Good morning.
Yeah, I was forced to call in that.
Who forced you to call?
No, I mean,
I'm only joking.
I was just making a joke. I'm forced to call because of the discussion. I like the join, right? Mm-hmm. And so the fact that the Pope, of many of the Negroes' minds, still on a tight rope, right? It shows you. I mean, I lean into what you're saying, Erin, but the fact is, I guess the Pope, in his speech, as what you were talking about in the initial part of the show, was referring to one of the most infamous papal bills would be the Treaty of Tordesillas, right? Mm-hmm. And so I don't know if anybody has ever took a look at it, right? And his scholars and advisors at the time, I think it was Pope Alexander VI, who drafted this and was, I guess, advised just like everybody else. But you look at it, it's quite sophisticated for its time, which really dealt with a demarcation of the original boundaries for sharing the world in half, which I think they used the Azores Island. It was an imaginary line to divide the world initially. And so the fact that they could have a papal bull to demarcate shows you the type of omnipotence, the type of power that they had over the world then. So I've been calling over a while. You would hear me and C. Allen and other people was talking about, from Gilbert Morris was on about oceans monopoly. Mm-hmm. These archaic laws still exist. One is which the Europeans, imperialists, they call terra nullius, which means land belongs to no one. And so when you look at oceans monopoly and the way they run it today, you could still claim these, you could claim islands just by staking a flag in the ground, et cetera, et cetera. All the legal framework is still there. All that is outdated. There's no oversight for these things. So these imperialistic ideals still exist. It's just up to us to be conscious. Mm-hmm. It's the same thing about religion. That's why I was telling easy brother who's come on about Israel united in Christ. I share a lot of his core concepts. But the fact that people don't want to have sensible dialogue about religion, this is why we would stay in the position we are as a people, as it relates to the Pope. But I mean, really and truly, I didn't know the Pope personally. I didn't care to know. But Erin, you mentioned the fact of all of these sexual assaults, et cetera, and the legacy of the Catholic Church as far as transubstantiation. We as Negroes have to do better than this. These words are not just words. These are words that they exist. Vicarious Christi. That means that you are Jesus Christ on earth. So now you're saying he died on the day that on Easter Monday, et cetera, et cetera. All this is to align himself with the form of a deity, which really is insanity for me personally. So I'm free. Religious freedom means just that, being free to think what you want. And so you had mentioned earlier in the show about other forms of religion, which would have been the Essenes and the Gnostics and the Lollards and all of these different people. Some in Europe and some was in Israel. And so the Pope actually went out of his way to instigate and in conflict with people like the Gnostics, and they eventually got rid of them. And Gnosticism still exists. And so we have become to believe that we need to go to, people guide us to God, but really and truly, you could go to God on your own. Give thanks.
Blessings. While you're talking 52, all I could see are the parallels to religion and politics in the way it's practiced. And the Pope has passed, and I hope that the College of Cardinals have the good sense to elect a Pope who evokes fear in the hearts of those who follow him.
What do you mean by fair?
I mean, the type of fear that'll make you realize just because you have authority, it doesn't mean you're authorized to molest little children or to ignore the molestation of little children or the devastation or destruction of indigenous people and vulnerable people. Right? The same thing with my prime minister. I want a prime minister that at this time, 2025, that can cause or compel his peers, his or her peers, their peers, those who work for them and with them, and people ordinarily in the Bahamas, to discipline themselves, to govern themselves, to do what they ought to do when they know they ought to do it. You're an MP, you're a member of cabinet, you have extra letters behind your name. Mm-hmm. I want a prime minister that with one look, you understand that you need to go and answer to the police right away. That's what I want. And I think that's what the world needs at this point in time. I want to know, what is the point of appointing a 76-year-old man to govern the whole world if he can't govern those who work immediately beneath him? These little children, these vulnerable people, they deserve more. And we can sit here in our reverence and pretty up and put on fascinators and gloves and all kinds of things, but none of that matters if the least among us are still vulnerable to the most vicious, nasty violence.
And I think the word fair may be appropriate, but to use differently. I think this is not done because of fear. The fear that the Catholic Church become like the Baptist religion, where everyone is split up and divide. And I think that fear has perhaps delayed, tarried, stopped, paused any popes from moving and changing things that has been being done for centuries.
Be more concerned about power than authority.
More concerned about the faith and separation.
But there you go. Producer, as we go to the break, I wanted to ask you a question.
Oh, by the way, coincidentally, I have the College of Bishops coming on tomorrow.
Bishops of whom?
That's what I want to find out. Did you know we have a College of Bishops in the Bahamas?
No, man, because...
You want to stay for that?
You mean today?
No, tomorrow.
I ain't sure.
Because I was trying to get them today, and they said, no, tomorrow. The bishops now, you got to talk to them a certain kind of way. The bishops.
Bishops of what?
The Christianity bishops. It's a college of Bahamian bishops.
They're accredited?
If you come and stay with me tomorrow, you'll ask that question. Why are you looking at me like that?
My eyes broke just now.
I didn't know we had one. Then I didn't realize that we have one.
I mean, I knew we didn't have one.
But we have one.
We don't have one. We don't have a...
We have a College of Bishops. And that's who they're coming on tomorrow at 11 o'clock. And you are free to join me to find out what do they mean they're a College of Bishops and what faith and denominations they are.
When we come back from the break, I'm going to touch base with our Catholic expert in the house.
Yeah.
And get an answer to the question that you put before me or caused me to ask. Mm-hmm. Do we have Catholics in the Bahamas, Roman Catholics in the Bahamas, or both?
Let me Google why I said that, because there's different type of Catholics. Let me think. Are there different types of Catholics?
And you want accuse me of heresy? What type of madness? You're on the clock with Erin Green. Stay tuned to Guardian Radio 96.9 FM. We'll be right back.
Boy, why you look so mashed up like clothes at the washer?
No, boy, just a hard day, boy.
Hard day? What happened? The breakfast lady ran out of tuna and Gretzy.
We need to start joking about everything, you know. This serious, boy. This real serious, boy.
Boy, what's serious? Tell me.
All right, well, today, boss gave us, boy, one big contract. And nobody else get a chance and nobody say nothing.
Boy, you know that ain't right. You know government contracts ain't supposed to go that way.
Yeah, but nobody's saying nothing. Boss man just tell people to sign the papers. Then he send me to meet this boy downtown and collect this envelope.
You need to tell somebody. You need to become a whistleblower.
You know I's a real man, but I never blow no whistle. I be drunk all my life and junk, you know.
No way. A whistleblower is someone who tells people what they see when they see something wrong happening at work.
But I ain't no whistleblower and I ain't no snitch. I still white there, you know.
But ain't nobody can know it's you. All you gotta do is call Crime Stoppers, or you could text them from inside the Crack Crime Bahamas. They don't ask about you, and your call goes straight through to Miami, so nobody know you is. And if you text, your message get mixed up like Kong Salad.
Call 328-8477 from Nassau or 242-300-8477 from the Family Islands.
Love the show? Want to give your support? Become a sponsor today. Call 302-2300 for our rates and packages. That's 302-2300. Become a sponsor on Guardian Radio 96.9 FM.
Welcome to Paradise Games, where exceptional service meets the ultimate gaming experience. Our dedicated team is here to make every visit a win.
Now this is paradise.
This is more than just a place to play.
Now this is paradise.
It's where excitement meets world-class service.
Now this is paradise.
Now this is paradise.
Come, experience it for yourself. Now this is paradise.
This is Guardian Radio 96.9 FM, streaming on GuardianTalkRadio.com and the Guardian Radio app, Nassau, Bahamas.
Mama, hey, hey, hey. Mama, I'll be around your swimming was out tonight. Happy Mother's Day. Mama, look, every day is Mother's Day. Mama, hey, for me to see you. I knew. She gave me life when I started. Stayed with me and never part. Held me close when I cried. Wiped the tears from my eyes. She understood my baby talk. Ooh, she was there when I started to walk. And I thank God, I thank God for Mama. Thank God for Mama. She taught me how to pray.
Welcome back to On the Clock with Erin Green. So I got a lot of notes in the break. One note said there's only one Catholicism, and that's Roman Catholicism. I got another note here that said, yes, there are different types of Catholicism within the larger Catholic Church, although they all share the same core. These distinctions are primarily based on liturgical traditions and historical context. But Nira, you had a song just now?
Mm-hmm. Thank God for Mama.
Yeah. Why we don't have a Mama C? We got a Papa C, but we don't have a Mama C.
We learned that women were not called to do certain things. They're called to serve differently inside the church. That's why we kind of have a Mama.
Who called them?
Well, Jesus.
The same person who called the Pope, right?
Yeah. So reading this, it says it's a Latin Rite Catholicism, which is a Latin or Roman Catholic Church. Then there's an Alexandrian Rite, which is a Coptic Catholic Church, Eritrean Catholic Church. I guess that's Ethiopian name. And there's the Ethiopian Catholic Church.
Eritrean and Ethiopian separate.
Okay.
Yeah.
Then there's a Western Syrian or Antiochian, from Antioch. That's that Eastern thing. Inside what that movie is I was talking about.
The Conclave?
Yes, they had him in his own vestiges, completely different from the Roman Catholic Church, but they're part of that diocese, I guess. Then they are the Armenian Rite Catholic Church, the Eastern Syrian Catholic Church.
They're all separate?
Separate.
From the Roman?
Different heads.
So hold on. So Vatican City, the Holy See,
that's Roman Catholics. That's Latin.
Yeah. And then all the others are different?
All the others are different, but they all share the Catholic concept or belief system. Because remember that Western Church was mostly Catholic. Forgive me for pronouncing it wrong. And then they had a schism, and then the Eastern Orthodox Church was formed when they had the schism, makes them all separate and whatever it is after that.
I understand. I don't understand.
So there's Roman Catholics,
but I'm not Catholic, so I don't need to.
There's Roman Catholics and they're Catholics.
I want to transition just briefly, fill in some. But before we go, I just want to say to the Catholic community in the Bahamas, we stand with y'all in this period of grief. Producer, let's prep the phone line in this period, and specifically this period of mourning for the Pope. And I pray, not everybody else, but I pray that y'all understand the importance of this moment, of choosing a leader. And don't just sit back and say, well, that's the college's job. If you're going to demand the space for your Christianity, then be a vibrant part of it. And write to your College of Cardinals and tell them, look here, y'all stop slapping up and appoint people who will, at the very least, protect the most vulnerable among us and among you. Let's go to the phone line. Good morning, caller.
Stark and voice along with you and Nuri, Erin.
Blessings, sir. How are you?
I'm holding, thank God.
Blessings.
Blessings to you also from God, of course. Now, I had some years ago, right?
Mm-hmm.
I was looking into that situation pertaining to the Catholic and the church, right?
Mm-hmm.
What I found out, and I think I still have a dictionary here, Catholic means univoice.
Universal.
Mm-hmm.
And also, it says one.
Mm-hmm.
So I tried to figure that out, but I understood, I've never read it, but I've understood there were other church was established around the same time or before, something of that sort.
Okay.
Mm-hmm. But the Catholic become universal. I would like to know how and why when church being established.
I get you. Absolutely. I'm gonna ask around and see if I can get some Catholics on to discuss these things. I think it's an important conversation. I think it'd be fun.
Thank you.
Absolutely. It's great to hear your voice, Brayman.
One must also appreciate that the early Christians were considered a cult, and it moved from being a cult to a mainstream religion, and that came in through the Emperor of Rome, and that's when it became the Holy Catholic Church. It moved from being Rome to the church, and it became one religion for all.
It's the same way the Spirit is the greatest scrap group in the history of Junkanoo white people and the whole world. We declare it so. And so it is. Let's go to the phone line. Good morning, caller.
Good morning, Miss Queen. How you doing?
I'm good, thank you. How are you?
Thank God for life, for sure. Good morning, Mr. Erin, to everyone else who listening, Papa. I say thank God, and I think the Catholic denomination or the Catholic Church is doing a lot of good for the world. From I was a baby, from I was small, I remember the Catholic Church. It's helpful, and you don't have to be a Catholic member to get help from the Catholic Church.
Mm-hmm.
And I think some of the other churches, or how you say, denominational religions, just do it too. So that's a good thing. But I keep trying to figure out what the deal is between Donald Trump and the people. Remember what they say about one another, but I know it was a problem. So I thinking like, should we expect a black pope soon, either from the Caribbean or Africa, or even a how do you say, bisexual or gay pope?
Okay, so two things. Let's not say them like they're equal in this particular context, right? I think we should equally not expect them, but I think they're two different conversations.
It's possible, but don't.
No, I didn't say it's possible. I'm saying the two things are different in terms of this consideration. I would not frame it like that. I wouldn't say you think we can see a black pope or a gay pope. I think they're two separate things. I think it's more likely that we would see a black pope than a gay pope, but I think it's also unlikely that we can see a black pope.
Pope of color or just black pope?
I think it's unlikely we can see a pope of color either. Okay. But not just a black pope. Okay, I got a text. I said, they heard me say fraction of the church.
A fraction, yeah. No.
It is also a fraction.
Yeah, when you consider the whole.
Right? Yeah, it's also a fraction.
Yeah.
But like fracking. And the text just said, no black or bisexual pope, stop dreaming. I want to know what y'all think Catholicism is.
A lot of single men.
Okay, just before we go.
A lot of single men.
And Catholic priests in Africa have had a consistent and persistent lobby for the changing of some rules within the Catholic priesthood. Catholic priests, they say, look, men, that sex is a natural human function. Catholic priests should be allowed to get married.
But the good thing in Africa is that the priests in Africa tend to join the priesthood late. They tend to be married beforehand and have children beforehand, and then they join.
And then they take up a life of celibacy.
Yes, after that.
Timing,
so they have children, and they do have a wife or ex-wife or whatever kind of wife they have.
The texts say they do not call it fractions. But let me have a little bit. You can't tease in the church, sir. Let me just have a little bit of fun teasing the church. Okay, so last two texts before we go. Technically, the Pope could go to any Catholic priest to receive the sacrament of confession.
Okay.
Pope Francis has been reported to occasionally ask priests at papal events to hear his confession. However, the usual practice, papal or papal confessor who regularly hears his confession. Another text, the word Catholic, derived from the Greek, means universal. Its opposite is sectarian, rather than Protestant. Many non-Catholic Christians insist on the use of the adjective Roman to describe the church that is in union with Rome, because they also regard themselves as Catholic. Very interesting. Another text. I'm sorry, but as a black man caught up in the New World, don't feel that many of us are not free, but much conformed. The greatest slavery was not chattel slavery, but the enslaving of the mind known as menticide. Erin, Eritrea, and Ethiopia were one until the independence of Eritrea. They were allowed to marry in the Dark Ages. So Catholic priests were allowed to marry in the Dark Ages.
I remember they have a separate Catholic concept in Ethiopia and in Eritrea.
Right, but that's not what they meant by dark.
No, I'm talking about...
I know.
Okay.
Also, just one last thing I want. Good morning. We had a black pope before Peter. Turkon, year 76. I got to do some...
Peter was a pope? And if he was a pope, wouldn't he be the first pope? So they're saying there was a pre-Peter, a pre-pope.
Women weren't allowed to talk back then. Hold my mouth.
But there were a number of black bishops. But like I say, Christianity started in Africa. There were a number of black bishops and who were present at the Nicene.
And it's important to understand that how we perceive and engage, operate around race. It didn't exist. It didn't exist back then.
Yeah.
The text says the boy Turkon was from Ghana. This is the last thing to respond to. The greatest slavery was not chattel slavery, but the enslaving of the mind known as menticide. Let me have a long conversation about what chattel slavery actually entailed, because some of us are, in our attempt to empathize with the colonizer, we are disregarding terms. Chattel slavery is not the same as servitude. Indentured servitude. It's not the same as the slavery practice at the time of Musa. Musa Mansa, the great African warrior. It was not the same. Chattel slavery, at the root of it, is just that, what you call menticide.
And you're born into slavery for life.
Right. You have no home, you have no language, you have no God. You have no one to cry out to. They took all of that away from you and tried to convince you that they created you. They and their God, not your God. Anyway, again, producer, I love the dichotomy, the conflict. Can Junkanoo and Christianity beat the same drum?
I didn't know they even had a Junkanoo ritual for Easter until I see it. And they said they've been having it for years. So I've been absent. Or going to church. Either one. Either one of them has been doing.
You need to go to church, Nuri.
Yeah.
I'm sorry, caller, we missed you, but stay tuned, because Guardian Radio AM with C.A. Nuri is up next.
Thank God for Mama. She taught me how to pray. Thank God for Mama. She taught me the right way.
This is Guardian Radio 96.9 FM. Streaming on GuardianTalkRadio.com and the Guardian Radio app, Nassau, Bahamas.